People tell stories for many reasons. People tell stories because stories are a very good way of teaching a lesson, illustrating a point. And people tell stories for the sake of telling stories, and they just find excuses. Well, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you a story to make a tiny point because I want to tell you the story. To make the tiny point. The story is famous. It's actually a very famous story. It's in a letter from the previous Rebbe, which I think is printed in Kuntres Limud HaChassidus. It's the biography of a chassid by the name of Rabbi Kusia Lepler, known affectionately as Kushya Lepler. Rabbi Kusia Lepler, as we know from the Hayom Yom, lived a very long time. He was a chassid of the Alter Rebbe, the Middle Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, and he knew the Rebbe Marash. He was a chassid of the Rebbe Marash as well, which means he knew the Rebbe Rashab. He used to say, he had a very good memory, and he used to say, Jeder Woche gehe ich zum Rebbe auf Yechidus, was der Rebbe ich will. That was his expression. Every week I have a Yechidus with a Rebbe, whichever Rebbe I wish. In other words, he, over the course of his life, had 70 or 80 Yechidus. And he recalled each one, and he could revisit them. Every week he would revisit the Yechidus, either by the Alter Rebbe, by the Middle Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, and the Rebbe Marash. So the story is that Kushya Lepler was one of those rare Hasidim whose heart and mind were disproportionate. He had a very ordinary mind. The previous Rebbe actually said he had a mind like a simple person, like a piece of wood. And he had the heart of a lion. He had the heart of a giant, of a big chassid. And as a rule, that's not how it is. A bigger mind has a bigger heart, and a smaller mind has a smaller heart. He was one of those rare exceptions. He was an incredibly passionate man. And he was a kremet, he was a shopkeeper. He was very, very far from rich. He was a simple, what you would call lower middle class person who lived in the city of Lepler, and he had a connection to the Alter Rebbe. There's a story how he came to the Alter Rebbe, that he heard about the Alter Rebbe, maybe he read the Tanya, and he got very excited. So he ran to Lozhna, and he came to the Alter Rebbe in the middle of the night. And he climbed into the window by the Alter Rebbe's cheder, and the Alter Rebbe looks up and he sees him. And he says to the Alter Rebbe, in Yiddish, of course, Rebbe, hak mir up dem linken Zeit, which means, Rebbe, please chop off, cut away my left side. So the Alter Rebbe went into a dvekes, into a trance, and he said, and the Alter Rebbe didn't speak, he spoke everything with a tune, with a melody. He said in that famous sing-song of his, V'yata machayes kulam, which means, you, God Almighty, give life to everybody and everything. Shaina me'echarayin, illuminate him as well. And as a result of this event, Kushya Lepler became, in effect, a tzaddik with Avos Hashem and Yiras Hashem, passions for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He didn't earn it, he didn't deserve it, it was a gift. In other words, the consummate Chabad Rebbe exercised a chagas technique. But since it was unearned, it would come and go. And Kushya Lepler used to say, Chassid ushal and Chassid prishal. The Chassid came, the Chassid left. And there's another Hayom Yom that when the Chassid was there, he could daven Shachas Mincha Ma'ariv in succession, one after the next. He would just finish Shachas, was time for Mincha. He would finish Ma'ariv, Mincha was time for Ma'ariv. That's how passionate his davening was. And when the Chassid would leave, he was a simple businessman who would daven with the minyan. Alter Rebbe passes away, and the Middle Rebbe becomes Rebbe. When the Middle Rebbe became his Rebbe, Chassidus Chabad changed considerably. The biggest difference was that the Middle Rebbe opened up Chassidus Chabad to younger light, to young married men, as opposed to seasoned Yidden who were already Gdoilim and Nigle, as it was by the Alter Rebbe. But the Middle Rebbe, at a much younger age, was Chassidus Chabad available to you. And the Middle Rebbe's MO, his approach, was to give enormous amounts of Chassidus in great generosity to many, many people, and to create a fever of Chassidus, a contagion, a deluge, a flood of Chassidus. One of the aspects of this was a policy. The policy was, any chassid can come to the Rebbe, to Middle Rebbe and Lubavitch, anytime he wanted, and stay as long as he wanted. So Chassidim would come for 3 months or for 6 months. They would leave their families and come to Lubavitch, and they would do what we would call, in halachic terms, shimush. They would be around, and they would learn Chassidus essentially day and night. And by the time they left, they had achieved a sufficient level of proficiency, certainly in understanding the Chassidus, and maybe even in knowing how to apply them to their lives, what we call in our culture, avoida, al derech haChabad. The rule was that when you went home, you had to stop on every village and town and city en route and repeat the Maamar you heard in Lubavitch. That was the requirement. That was the tuition. That was the price for coming to Lubavitch. So one of these Jungelite passes through Leple on the way back from Lubavitch. As he arrived, the whole city, all the Chabad Hasidim gathered. He's a shliach of the Rebbe. They put him at the head of the table. They gave him incredible respect, notwithstanding his youth, and he chazers a Maamar, which went on for several hours. But the Middle Rebbe, Chassidus was much, much longer than it was by the Alter Rebbe, and it was much more involved, and Rebbe Kossia Lepler was completely lost. Now, Rebbe Kossia Lepler's being lost was a totally reasonable thing, because he was not such an intelligent man. But he was very upset, because he cared. And by the Alter Rebbe, the Maamar was shorter, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and he was able to follow. So after this younger man finished Chazir, the Maamar, Rebbe Kossia Lepler approached him, and he asked him when he's leaving, and he says, leaving that day or the next day. He says, please, I need you to stay. I didn't get the Maamar. I need you to repeat it to me again. And the expression that he used was, the Maamar habe ich verstanden, den Bier habe ich nicht verstanden. The Maamar I understood, the explanation I didn't understand. What this means is that a Maamar Chassidus usually goes on a pasuk. On rare occasion, it goes on a Maamar Chazal, on a Mishnah, a Gemara, or a Medrash. And on even rare occasion, you have Maamarim that are called lahavin, that begin with to understand the concept. The Maamar would be the analysis of the pasuk, or the Maamar Chazal, or the concept. The discussion with which the Maamar opens is usually the discussion with which the Maamar closes. The Beer would be a journey into mysticism and philosophy, analyzing some esoteric idea as a means of setting up the explanation that enlightens the Maamar, the beginning and the end, in other words. So because he said he understood the beginning and the end, which is called the Maamar, the Beer, the philosophy, the mysticism, the heart, the Chassidus, he didn't get. So the Chassid stays another day and repeats it again for Kossia Lepler, and he still didn't get it. To make a long story short, he kept this man in Lubavitch for a week. He repeated it to him several times a day, and he wasn't happy. So he walked to Lubavitch, and he came into the Middle Rebbe, and he complained. He says, I went to your father, I understood the Chassidus. This young boy could not have gone to your father, he's too young. He shows up in town and he recites a Maamar for 2 hours, 2.5 hours, with such excitement and such delight. It's obvious he understands every word. And I can't get it. And he repeats to the Middle Rebbe the same protest. The Maamar habe ich verstanden, den Bier habe ich nicht verstanden. Now Kossia Lepler had, from the earlier generation, a candy that the Alter Rebbe gave him a bracha to have Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem. But the Middle Rebbe did not repeat that. The Middle Rebbe told him, Ein lecha davar ha'emed b'fnei haratzon, which means nothing stands in the way of will. If you'll will enough, you can develop your mind and understand Chassidus. So Kossia Lepler sent a message home that he's staying in Lubavitch for an indefinite period of time. They should manage the store without him. He stayed in Lubavitch, I think, for 6 months or 9 months. And he made Lubavitch crazy. Every day, 1 or 2 or 3 of the young alike had to say over to him again and again and again and again the Maamar of Shabbos. The previous Rebbe describes him going out into the fields and forcing himself to concentrate on one thought for long periods of time. The end of the story is that Kossia Lepler willed to understand Chassidus so much that he became the consummate expert, the greatest master of Chassidus Chabad was Kossia Lepler. And the previous Rebbe says, Adin and Kitzur Shulchan Aruch he had trouble with. A Mishnah he had trouble with. He was really a simple man. But he willed himself to understand Chassidus, and when it came to the learning of Chassidus, he literally metamorphosed, he changed, he developed this incredibly deep and sophisticated and sensitive and subtle mind. The Middle Rebbe, the second Lubavitcher Rebbe, as we know, wrote Chassidus for every group, every class, every level, every category of Chassidim. The most difficult Chassidus ever written, and specifically written by the Mittel Rebbe, is the Imrei Bino, which was written for this Chassidus B'Kasiya Lepler, which gives you an idea how deep a mind he develops. And the end of the story is that the Rebbe Marash told the Rebbe Rashab that when he was learning Imrei Bino, which was the Chassidus that the Mittel Rebbe wrote for this Chassidus B'Kasiya Lepler, he asked his father, the Tzemach Tzedek, to explain it to him. And the Tzemach Tzedek told him, Kushi is do. A shaila in Imrei Bino daf me fragen by Rabbi Kasiya. Kushi Lepler is in Lubavitch. A question in Imrei Bino you should ask by this Chassid Rabbi Kasiya Lepler. So the Marash went to Kushi Lepler, who remember was a Chassid of the Alter Rebbe, and he asked him Pshat in Imrei Bino, and Kushi Lepler said to him, Hezachay. Ich bin a Seicher, I'm a businessman, and businessmen always make a deal. So I'm not going to give you the information for free, you have to pay for it. So the Marash said to him, what do you want? He says, I want, first of all, you should chazer for me the Maamar from last Shabbos. Second of all, I'm going to ask you questions on the Maamar. And you have to answer the questions. After I ask you all my questions and you give me all your answers, I'll answer your questions at Imrei Bino. So the Rebbe Marash had no choice. So he recited the Maamar, and the Kushi Lepler started asking him questions. And the Rebbe Marash says, most of the questions he asked me, I couldn't answer myself. I had to go to my father, to the Tzemach Tzedek, for the answers. And then I asked my questions of Rabbi Kasiya Lepler in Imrei Bino, and my father, the Tzemach Tzedek, wanted to hear what he said. So the Rebbe Marash says, that week I was like a shuttle back and forth between Rabbi Kasiya Lepler and my father, the Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, and he says, it was one of the luckiest weeks of my life. This was what Kushi Lepler became. And of course, the usual basis for telling this story is to illustrate the two lives of Rabbi Kasiya Lepler. The Alter Rebbe made him into a big chassid through a nes, through a bracha. The Mittel Rebbe made him into a big chassid through an instruction, through a hira, and he has to do the work himself. So that's the story, bekitzer, in short. Why am I telling you the story? I'm telling you the story to make a very, very minor point. But in the meantime, you heard the story, which is already worthwhile. And that is that Maamar Chassidus used to be called in the olden days a Maamar and a Biur. You say the word a Maamar. Of Chassidus, a Maamar means for the beginning to the end. In reality, a Maamar is really a combination of a Maamar, which is the beginning and the end, that studied, that analyzed, that questioned a pasuk. And in the middle, you'll have a lahavan zeh yesh lahagdim tchil. You have to digress, go off into another sphere, another realm, another world, and introduce a clarification, a biur, and then you would revisit the Maamar at the end. Why is this relevant to us? Simple. Because we're learning a Maamar, and this is our 6th or 7th class. I forgot already how many. And this is the last one. And we're going back to the Maamar. If you could remember when we started this, we started the Maamar with the pasuk Maamar Mah Tovu Yaakov mishkin nesecha Yisroel. And the Rebbe observed that there's two levels of Yaakov. Because Esav says, Vayakveini zeh pamayim, that Yaakov is two madreges. So the Rebbe says, Maamar Mah Tovu Yaakov is 2 levels, mishkin nesecha Yisroel is a 3rd. But in order to explain the 3 levels of Maamar Mah Tovu Yaakov, mishkin nesecha Yisroel, we went off into this very, 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 involved discussion about Teshuvah, and we had basically 3 levels of Teshuvah. If you could recall, the first Teshuvah is Elokeinu, the second Teshuvah is Hashem Elokeinu, and the third Teshuvah is Ata Hashem Elokeinu. Elokeinu means that the Eibusha should be specially our God. Havai Elokeinu means that the Eibusha should be revealed to us in as much as He's our godliness. And Ata Havai Elokeinu is that we should know the Eibusha himself. And the Maamar said, the Teshuvah of Elokeinu is to stop doing Averis, not to stop making mistakes, be focused on HaKadosh Baruch. The Teshuvah of Havai Elokeinu is mitzvahs. We increase in doing mitzvahs to bring more godly light into the world and to us. And the Teshuvah of Ata Hashem Elokeinu is learning Torah, which connects it to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to Atzmos, which is above the godliness which has a relationship with the world. This, in summary, is what we learned in the first class. Since that time, we had a class on the first Teshuvah, we had a class on the second Teshuvah, we had a class on the third Teshuvah, and I think we had 2 more classes that discussed a variety of different points in the Maamar. I'm sorry, 1 more class, which discussed Becher, Beis Reish Chav, Beis Chav Reish, which is how these 3 Teshuvahs have an aliyah into a higher level. We're ready for the end of the Maimed, and we're going back to the Maimed. In other words, we talked about Teshuvah, with 3 levels of Teshuvah, how the 3 levels of Teshuvah raise up to a higher level. Now we go back to what's called in the culture the Maimed, the Pasuk, Maamar Mah Tovu Yaakov Mishkenesecha Yisroel. And the key to the class, I told you already, that in the words Maamar Mah Tovu Yaakov, you have the first 2 Teshuvahs. And in the words Mishkenesecha Yisroel, you have the 3rd Teshuvah. And if all goes well, you'll see at the end of the class that actually Mishkenesecha Yisroel is also 2 Teshuvahs. We call them one because on that highest of levels, the 2 Teshuvahs are considered one and the same. So, without any further ado, we're now revisiting the Maimed. Bilam Harasha is cursing the Jewish people. And in cursing the Jewish people, he says the Pasuk, Maamar Mah Tovu Yaakov Mishkenesecha Yisroel. That he praises the tznius of the Jewish people, that the tents of Yaakov are good, and the resting places of Yisroel are also good. And he points out that even though Yaakov's name was changed to Yisroel, we continue calling him Yaakov, and the Rebbe wanted to know why. And he explained to us 3 madregas of Teshuvah. A Teshuvah of Sor Meirah, not sinning, a Teshuvah of Asei Teiv, doing more mitzvahs and bringing more light into the world, and a Teshuvah of Torah, which connects it to the Eibishter himself. So the Rebbe now says on line 238, V'zehu, and after all of these discussions on Teshuvah, we can go back to the original pasuk. Maamar Mah Tovu Yaakov, how good are your tents, Yaakov, Jacob. Mishkenesecha means the seat that you provide HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisroel, for the name of the Jewish people called Yisroel. So you have 2 names of Jewish people, Yaakov and Yisroel. You have 2 names of the lodgings of the Jewish people, Ohel and Mishkan. And the Rebbe is going to parallel, he's going to align the word Ohel with the word Yaakov and the word Mishkan with the word Yisroel and so on. Says the Rebbe Pirush, this means Habeis Teshuvah is the first 2 of the 3 levels of Teshuvah we discussed above, which is Sur Meirah, staying away from sin, so that Hashem should be Elokeinu, unser Gott, our personal God, Vasei Teiv, doing mitzvahs. Not only doing mitzvahs because you have an obligation, but doing mitzvahs like it says in Chassidus. Teshuvah, Maisim Teivim, Kol Yom B'Teshuvah, you're doing mitzvahs to connect yourself to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And when you do the mitzvahs to connect yourself to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you bring godliness, which is related to the world, into the world. So both of these levels of Teshuvah, Sur Meirah, that Hashem should be our personal God, and Asei Teiv, that more of godly light should be brought to us. Hey, Bechinas Yaakov, they're both part of the service of a Jew and a neshama on the level of Yaakov. And what is the level of Yaakov? Yud Eikev. The Yud means subservience to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, a sense of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, a connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But Eikev means a heel. Someone who's very distant, who's very far away, needs to do Teshuvah on these levels. Keheim Bechinas Maiseh. This is all the level of action to stay away from evil and in order to do good. That through this mamshich hayud bebechinas eikev, we draw down the yud into the heel. In other words, you bring godliness down into the lower levels of the neshama, and by so doing, there's an event of Teshuvah, and that's the pshat Maamar Mah Tovu Yaakov. There's a level called Ohel, which is a lower level you see momentarily. And the level called Ayav, a Yid does Teshuvah on a level where he is called Yaakov, and the Teshuvah that a Yid performs connects the Yud with the heel. V'gam, in addition to the word Yaakov meaning the letter Yud which goes on Bittel, and the word Eikev which means heel, B'chol Mokum, we know throughout that Hainu page, the next page, line 241, Zayin Tachtenis, the 7 lower midas and lower spheres. They're included in the word Yaakov. Says the Rebbe V'hinei, accordingly, B'kol Mokum, throughout Chassidus, Hazayin Tachtenis Nikroim B'Shem Yainke B'chulu. The lower 7 spheres and midas are called Yaakov B'chulu. And in addition, V'zayin Tachtenis, the lower level midas, 7 midas and spheres, are the 2 levels of Ruach and Nefesh. And I don't know for sure, but I'm going to suppose Nefesh would be Netzach Hod Yesod, and Ruach would be Chesed Gevurah Tiferes. So Yaakov, which includes all 7 of these midas, includes the level of Nefesh, which is the Teshuvah of Elokeinu, and the level of Ruach, which is the Teshuvah of Hashem Elokeinu. As opposed to Ve'gimel Rishenis, the 3 first midas and spheres, is the level of Neshama, and this is associated with the 3rd Teshuvah, which is accomplished through learning Torah. And accordingly, Teshuvah Sadishen is the first two levels of correction and return. The Nefesh Veruach are the levels of the Neshama called Nefesh and Ruach Yaakov are associated with the name of Yaakov Avinu, Yaakov, the idea of correcting the heel. Vazehu, which is at the Pasuk, says, and we said at the very beginning of the Maamar, Vayakveini ze pamayim, Esav accuses Yaakov of fooling him twice, of tricking him twice. But he uses the word Vayakveini. And this word is written into the Torah, which means that it's a part of Torah Nitzchis, Torah Semes. The Vayakveini means on two occasions or on two levels, he used the method associated with the name Yaakov. Hainu Beis Teshuvah Sanau, which is the two levels of Teshuvah we discussed earlier. The Teshuvah of going away from lack of focus, which is Alekeinu, and the Teshuvah by bringing additional light, which is Hashem Alekeinu, Sur Meira and Aseite. Continues the Rabbi and he says, V'nikra, and the Teshuvah associated with the level of the Neshama called Yaakov, brings the Eibishter to itself on a level which is called a tent. Oyel. What do you know about Oyel? It's indirect. A tent is not necessarily to a person's size. One person can live in a very large tent. Many people can live in a very small tent. Tents are not specific to a person like clothing. They're a much larger area and not directly connected to the person. And the point is that not sinning, which is the first teshuvah, and doing mitzvahs, which is the second teshuvah, nemshachim makifim, it brings down what's called in our culture makifim, indirect lights. And therefore we use the word oyel, because a tent represents something that hovers, that embraces, like the halachas of oyel you have l'gabe tum and tara. The level which is called oyel, the level which is called a tent, brings godliness to a person in a way that remains always indirect. In avodadik terms, this would mean it doesn't change you, it doesn't transform you. You remain the same person you were before, but you're touched by it, you're aware of it, it moves you, but it doesn't transform you. And he says on line 245, for the light of godliness through Teshuvah, to be internalized by a person and to transform the person and transform the Torah, for this way they take it at the third Teshuvah, which is Torah. But the Teshuvah, number 1 and number 2, which does not involve Torah, does not have that effect. Line 246, Chassidus explains on these words which are in the Yom Tov and Shabbos davening, that we ask Hashem to make us holy with His mitzvahs, and to give us a chelek, a portion in His Torah. So Chassidus explains what this means. What is the meaning of making us holy? Shaydei mitzvahs, when a yid does mitzvahs, nasa b'chinas kedushin, he becomes separated from the whole world. Like it says in Tanya, chapter 46 and 47. It brings on indirect light. B'chinas save of kalam, from the level which is infinite light. Ukamei tabas kedushin v'chol, like the ring of kedushin, which is also round, and the circular, the spherical shape of the ring of kedushin is a symbol for save of kalam. So how do we understand it? You do mitzvahs, you become kedushin. What is kedushin? Betrothed. What does betrothed mean? Without getting into the long discussion, betrothed means formally married without being intimately married. Married in the sense that I can't have a relationship with anybody else. Not married in the sense that I don't yet have a chuppah, an intimate relationship with the person I actually married. So mitzvahs are kedushin. We're separated from the whole world, but we're not yet intimate with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because the light of godliness we bring to ourselves through mitzvahs is makif. Torah, on the other hand, is because Torah is something we actually internalize. You learn an idea in Torah, your brain changes to accommodate the idea. The idea is changed in terms of the fact that it's in your particular brain. And that's a pnimius transition, which you have only in Torah, you do not have in mitzvahs. On line 247 in the middle, the light of godliness, the life of godliness, the energy of godliness which is brought down is internalized. Like it says in the Pasuk, and the way this works is, a person approaches his life in his avodah in a gradualistic way. And the first step is staying away from evil. He causes, by doing teshuvah for his avedas, by doing teshuvah for his indifference, he causes the Eibishter to return and come to him. However, and by doing mitzvahs, to bring God the light to oneself, we bring bechinas gilui shem havaya, revelation of God's name, to ourselves. The above two ideas, both the concept of not doing Avedas as well as the concept of doing mitzvahs, bring godliness to you. That remains indirect. And therefore, Yaakov also says that he sat in tents, in plural. Why does it have to say in tents? In plural, he should have said Yeshiv Ehel. He could only be in one tent at a time. What's the point of multiple tents? So the Rebbe says, Hainu beis Ehel imanal, damshachas davai v'lakeinu v'cholu. Why does it say Ohel lecha in plural? Because there's two levels of Ohel. There's a level of Ohel associated with Sur Meirah, and the level of Ohel associated with the level of V'asei Tev. And now he adds on 251 a Pirush, Ma Tevu. He translates the two words Ma and the word Tev. The word Ma means total bittul HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That one doesn't have any identity as a yesh. As the pasuk says, if someone is humble, modest, before HaKadosh Baruch Hu was a him Tev, then they're considered good. The Ksiv, as the pasuk says, Ki Tev, Omer Azal Tev, Ligzeis. Tev means to be good, and therefore, Tev Ligde, it's good to conceal it. Hainu bechiras vatzne alechad v'chulu, that anything which is good is supposed to be concealed. So he translates the two words Ma and Tovu. Ma means a Yid's avoida, even the lower levels of Yaakov has a bittul to it. And then we have also the idea of Toiv. Toiv means a godly light which is concealed because it's transcendent, it's above, it's infinite. And Ma Tovu Oyalecha Yaakov, that when a Yid serves Hashem, even the lower levels of Soy Merana say Tev, but with bittul. And with the tznius, so he merits Ayalecha Yaakov. And then line 255, the Alter Rebbe continues and he says, Mishkan Yisecha Yisroel, there's also the concept of Yisroel, a higher name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which brings about Mishkan, which means a more permanent seat. Pirush Bechinas Yisroel, the level of Yisroel Usheich, and Bechinas Pnimius Makif. Mamish is the kind of level of the Neshama, which can, and therefore must be internalized. That can't be indirect alone. And now we're on line 256. In order for godliness to enter into a person in an intimate way, in a pneumistic way, as opposed to just enveloping him and separating him, you have to learn Teiro. Come on, as the Gemara says. From the time the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, the only place where God Almighty can rest in His world is a place where people learn Torah. In other words, Nimtza. This means the Torah represents a place where there can be a hashra, where the Shechina can rest in a way which is called Pnimius, just like in the Beis HaMikdash. It was called Mishkan, and the connotation of the word Mishkan wasn't only that the Shechina was there, but it was there in a way which we call Pnimius. Similarly, when you speak about the Torah being a Mishkan on a Yid, it's also a way which is called Pnimius. Now I want to take something very interesting. This is, I suppose, a little bit tangential, but not entirely tangential. I happen to be learning Bashgocha Pratis on my own, the Kocha from the Rebbe Marash, which is my modem from the Rebbe Marash, from 1877. And it's very, very involved. One of the ideas which came up in the Vakocha is the concept of Teshuvah and Refuah. The person does Teshuvah and there's a healing. In other words, you go to a doctor and you get healed. So the Maamar proposes that in the idea of Teshuvah and Refuah there is two concepts. One is returning to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the other is being healed. And the way he explains it into the Maamar is Teshuvah, returning to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is crying out. Returning to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is having feelings for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem. Returning to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Koivesh Es Yitzrei, somebody who bends his Yitzrei Ra. In other words, returning to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is what you give. After you give, you learn Torah, and the Torah heals. In other words, a person is sick, and he needs medicine. First of all, he has to get to the doctor. So what the Maamar says is that to get into the doctor is called Teshuvah. The healing that happens once one gets to the doctor, this is called Torah. That's how it's explained in that Maamar. Here you have three Teshuvahs. And if the parallel is precise, there's 3 teshuvahs and there's different refuahs. You have to return to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And there is returning to HaKadosh Baruch Hu on a level of Alekeinu, where the refuah is that Hashem pays special attention to you. There's the teshuvah returning to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, where the teshuvah is Hashem Alek, where the refuah is Hashem Alekeinu. In other words, you do mitzvahs and the Eibishter separates you. And there's the teshuvah associated with Ata Hashem Alekeinu, which brings the Eibishter to you through Torah. In other words, the Torah heals you and includes you in HaKadosh Baruch Hu in what's called the Pnimius way. And as our Maamar said, the first 2 teshuvahs are associated with Oyel and Yaakov, and the third teshuvah is associated with Mishkan and Yisroel. So he explained the word Mishkan, that is in the word Shechina. Now he explains the word Yisroel. Line 258. When in Yisroel Lireish, the word Yisroel connotes that the Jewish people's relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu are like the Herkoyachal, his head, Shabareish Ugilu Amoich. At the place of the head is where the deepest levels of the neshama, which are called moichin, reveal themselves similarly in our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in as much as we're called Yisroel. That means the deepest levels of godliness rest in us. And the head, which is where the deepest levels of the neshama are revealed, they're also revealed. The life of the entire person is also revealed in a way of pnimius. Masha b'sharei varam, the remaining limbs. Hurak bebechinas makiv. It's on a level of indirectness. In the mayach, it's bepnimius. The brain has many functions. One of them is the neshama comes into the brain. Once the neshama comes into the brain distributes it, that each part of the body should get the aspect of life and neshama which are specific to it. So the brain gets the whole neshama and distributes it. Then the brain feels and integrates the different levels of life which are all over the body, and it controls it, it manages it, it leads it, it directs it. So the brain does many things. One of the things that's true about the brain is that since the whole neshama rests in the brain, and the brain distributes life to the whole of the person, accordingly, there are aspects of the neshama which are connected to the whole person, but they're revealed in the brain. And the example that he gives is will. Let's look at it inside. For example, thought, and in this case, thought means a lavush for ratzon, will. That will is also in the foot. The moment the person has a will and a thought that represents that will, to move his leg, the leg is going to move. Doesn't take any time at all. Now's not the time and place to go into this, but this is, of course, Tanya, the beginning of chapter 23. And you may recall we had classes earlier on Mamale Kalaman and Sevav Kalaman, and we discussed that Sevav Kalaman is like will. Will is like reflex or like instinct. And the concept of will is that the whole body is one entity that is willed into action. And therefore, there's no time elapsation between when the will of the person commands the body to act and the body listens, assuming the body is healthy. So Chassidus would say, how is it that when you want to do something, you do it so instantaneously? Because will is not in the brain, will is everywhere. If it was an idea that's passing from your brain to your arm, for example, to draw a picture, you have to concentrate and it takes time. If the idea is to sing a song, so it's a pnimius influence from the brain on the mouth and the lungs and so forth, so it takes time and you have to concentrate. But to do things associated with will, like, for example, to write, or to talk, or to walk, as opposed to drawing and singing and dancing, this happens automatically because will is everywhere. Says the Rabbi, even though it's true that will is everywhere, but not everywhere feels the will. Only the brain does. Ein ze'ela, the reason why when you want to do something, you do it so instantaneously, is mipnei sha'machshava. Me'ira gam beregel, will is everywhere, including in the foot. Avo, it may be true that will, which is a mashal for save of kalalman, is so instantaneous in the person, because will is not a level of the soul which is specific to one limb or organ, but it's everywhere. But afal pikein ha'arazu, this shine or light of will, is rak bebechinas makif, is indirect. In other words, she'ein haregel mahaseg musa machshava. The nature of a healthy body is you want to do something and it does it automatically, but not that the want is felt in the foot, only that the responsiveness or the cooperation is felt in the foot. In the head and the brain, the will itself is actually felt and experienced. In other words, the brain has two advantages over the rest of the body. First of all, the realm of understanding and intellect, and second of all, an experience of the will of the person. And therefore, Yaakov and Oyal represent the lower levels of the neshama. Yisroel and Mishkan represent the higher levels of the neshama. And he repeats again in line 263, the lower levels of the neshama, which are called Yaakov, go on the level of heel, Shayadei Amaisa, through doing an action, which is the Teshuvah of Asay Tev, the second Teshuvah. When you bring it down incredibly high light, but it's hidden, it's indirect. It separates you, but it doesn't transform you. Yisroel, the level of the neshama called Yisroel, which goes on the head, which is Aidei Yesek Torah, which is the third level of Torah, Teshuvah, which is achieved or healed through Torah. It reveals and shines that the infinite light should be that the person should be able to experience it. So Yisroel is the third level. It's associated with Torah, and by learning Torah, Yid becomes one with Sevav Kalaman in a level which is called Pnimius. And this is a bit complicated because we don't feel it. If we would feel how when we learn Torah, we bring Sevav Kalaman by Pnimius, it would destroy us, which is also mentioned in Tanya chapter 23, but we're going to leave this aspect for a different discussion. That Yaakov Avinu started out to be called Yaakov. And the Malach, and then later HaKadosh Baruch Hu tell him, your name is not Yaakov anymore, your name is Yisroel. And the meaning of Yisroel is Harisem Elikim, you were stronger than an Elikim, which means an angel. And Va'anoshim means people. That means the Malach of Esav, technically, literally. And Esav Hagashmi, the physical man Esav. And Tzadisam Elikim means that the word Yisrael is higher than the name Elikim. Pirush, in other words, Hu Mishtaret al Shem Elikim, that Yaakov Avinu is stronger than the level of Shem Elikim. Va'anoki Shem Elikim, the divine name Elikim, is also godliness. And it's especially godly when you don't call it Elikim, you call it Elikeinu, not the godliness of concealment, but my personal godliness. And nevertheless, Yisrael is greater than this. Hu bechinas magain, the name Elikim and Elikeinu was only a shield or a sheath. L'shem havaya, to the higher name of God Almighty. Havaya, and vaidei heisek v'teira, and one studies Torah, goyrim, he affects. There should be no empty space and no separations, but rather he brings down Shem Havaya. When a person studies Torah, Hashem joins him. This is why a person becomes a master over godliness, because as he learns the Torah, God Almighty learns the Torah with him. And this is the Torah, the third Teshuvah, the Teshuvah of Torah, which he calls here Shem Havaya. But of course, you have to be a little bit careful here. Why? Because we have two Yaakovs, right? And the two Yaakovs would be, the first Yaakov would be Sarisem Elikim, that you're stronger than Elikim, you reveal Elikeinu. The second level of Yaakov would be Sarisem Elikim, you reveal Hashem Elikeinu. But even the second level, which is Havaya Elikeinu, was still connected to the word Yaakov. How you bring the Yud into Ekev. The true concept of Yisrael is neither Elikeinu nor Hashem Elikeinu. It's Ata Hashem Elikeinu. So the parallel between the form of the bracha we discussed last week and this pasuk is a bit complicated. So we explained, we translated the word Ma, we translated the word Toiv, and we said Yaakov, Yaakov, that the levels of the neshama called Yaakov bring godliness in an indirect way called Oyel, and there's two levels of this. The first is the Teshuvah of Sur Merah, the second is the Teshuvah of Asay Tev. The third Teshuvah is called Yisroel, and it's connected to Mishkan. So the Rebbe says, so far we explained the word Ma, the word Tevu, the word Elecha, the word Yisroel, and the word Mishkan Yisacha from the word Shechina and the word Yisroel. On line 268, he brings another distinction. The primary difference between the word oyel, which means a home, which is an indirect association, and mishkan, which means a seat, which was a far more pneumius and direct association, is a pi masha kosov based on the psuk. Where do you have the word oyel and mishkan in spiritual terms? Simple. The tabernacle, the mishkan, the mobile, the temporary house of God Almighty had a roof that was made of animal skins and animal wool. The lowest level was made of 4 different materials, wool and linen. The second one was made of goat's hair. And the lower one is called mishkan, and the second one is called oyel. So the Rebbe now is going to use that idea, that in the tabernacle, the mishkan of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there's a lower level of yiriyah, of a curtain, which is called mishkan. And in this case, it's mishkan Yisroel. And a higher level of a curtain, which is called oyel. And in this pasuk is called oyelecha Yaakov. And the Rebbe explains as follows. Vasisa yiriyes izim la'oyel ala mishkan. The lower level of curtain is called mishkan, the higher level of curtain is called oyel. And it begins, asher ha-mishkan, the lower level of curtain, which is called mishkan. It's as the yiriyes is 10 curtains. Sheish mars are made of linen and also woven together with chelas argam and v'gemer, with 3 different types of wool. So this mixture of wool and linen, the Rebbe explains, according to Kabbalah, goes on the 7 midas. Sheish, linen, is from the word 6, is inyan shisha midas, the 6 emotions. Shemhem nimshach kasher upasal v'chulu, which makes all the diversity in the human experience in Torah to decide whether something is kosher or not kosher, in one's relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, different types of emotional attachments to him, and so forth and so on. These different emotions are represented by the various colors of the wool, which is the concept of Torah, that is, if you will, colorful. Goes on tefillah, I suppose, on davening. So you have the 6 midas represented by the word sheish. You have the variety represented by blue and red or purple. And then the red, shani, the teleya, the worm, goes on tefillah. And all of this is included in the 3rd Teshuvah. In Tanya, he gets the Teshuvah Perek Yud, he connects Torah and Tefillah in Teshuvah law, so I suppose that's how Telas Shani, which goes on Tefillah, becomes included in the Teshuvah of Torah. But in short, that's the Taich Mishkan Esach Yisrael. The word Mishkan means the curtain that's colorful. And the curtain that's colorful represents a diversity of different types of relationship with Hashem. The constant is that all of these various types of relationship with Hashem are a purely spiritual engagement between Hashem and the person. What about oil, which is made of goat's hair? The curtain is made of goat's hair, which is called oil. And by the way, there was 11 of those curtains. And in Kabbalah and in Chassidus, the difference between the number 10, the Mishkan had 10, and the Yiriyas oil had 11. Is that 11 is a number associated with the opposite of Kedusha, with Klippa. It says the Rebbe Ha'inyan, the idea is Kehei Mehabirurim, that comes from clarifying and transforming evil into good. Shemizbarer, and we create a clarity, mi klipas noiga, to incorporate the klipa, which is called noiga, into kedusha. So oihel, in addition to meaning temporary, in addition to meaning indirect, it means transformation. The lower 2 teshuvahs, the teshuvah of Sur Meirah, and even the teshuvah of Seitayv, has to do with fixing the world, as opposed to the teshuvah of Torah, which is going from good to better in holiness itself. The pasuk says, that Esav was hairy. And of course, we associate the hair of Esav with goats. And Klippa can live from the hair of goats. And the hair of Esav represents this, and therefore, there needs to be the transformation of Klippa into Kedusha. He doesn't have here, which is Chelek Havaya Ame. And in this case, the key word in this pasuk is not the word Yaakov, but the word Havaya. The 3rd Teshuvah, the Teshuvah of Torah. Line 276. Omnam, it's true, however, that Al Yedei Abirurim, when a person engages in what is by itself unholy, and he creates a clarity and a separation and uplifting and including in Kedusha of Klipa. Besor me'era, by staying away from evil. Vasei tev, and doing good. Mevared, one brings a clarity. Mebechinas shaydas he'izim, that from the hair of goats, which is by itself Klipa, and raises it up into Kedusha, K'mashikosov, as the Pasuk says, Ves eides gedoye ha'izim, mabish ha'yadav ha'gemer. Yaakov Avinu himself, he doesn't have a lot of hair. And Rivka puts the hair of goats on his arms, which means the idea that Yaakov is also Mevared Esav. Vainu Gamkein, this means also Shemhem Nasa Agona Lias La'el Omegan Al Mishkan, it protects the Mishkan. What is the Mishkan? Shu Bechinas Teda, which is the Teda that is purely involved in spirituality and godliness and is not involved with Klipa, Lahagan Alav and Achitzeinim L'Tcheisim, to protect them from Klipas and to push them away. That's it. That's it. We're done. Like I said to you in the beginning, we're discussing the Maamar. The beer took 5 or 6 classes. This is the Maamar. Oyhel and Mishkan represent 3 levels. There's 2 levels of oil, 1 level of Mishkan. Yaakov and Yisroel represent 3 levels. There's 2 levels of Yaakov, and there's 1 level of Yisroel. And when it's used properly, when you have the proper Ma, which is Bittul Toiv, you reveal a secret light. In the Teshuvahs of the first level of Yaakov, and the second level of Yaakov, and the level of Yisroel, these are the 3 Teshuvahs that our Maamar is about. Elokeinu, and Hashem Elokeinu, and Ata Hashem Elokeinu, which is Somera, Seitev, and Limud HaTorah. So the Rebbe, after going off on this used tangent, connected it to the Pasuk. Now, we probably could analyze this more and delve further into the Pasuk, but we're going to leave the Pasuk alone, and we're going to move on to the last point in the Maamar, which is on 297. Now, from here until the end, it's hard to know. I mean, in general, in this Maamar, I've told this to you before, it's hard to know what's the Tzemach Tzedek's and what's the Alter Rebbe's. So I put some parts of it in a smaller type, which means that I'm assuming it's the Tzemach Tzedek's, and a part of it in a larger type, which means I'm assuming it's the Alter Rebbe's. I by no means am sure of it. Let me just say this. What the Alter Rebbe is going to propose here, it is actually 4 teshuvahs and not 3. The first 2 teshuvahs are associated with Yaakov, the second 2 teshuvahs are associated with Yisroel. And this, of course, is connected to the 4 letters of Hashem's name, Yud, Kei, Vav, Kei, where it says in Zohar, and it's explained in Igeres HaTeshuvah, and the Rebbe's father has notes on it, and the Rebbe has siches on his father's notes on the Igeres HaTeshuvah, which are printed in Likutei Torah, explaining all of this, that Teshuvah means Toshav Hay, to return the hay. So Chassidus says, when you say Toshav Hay, there's 2 ideas. The first idea means the hay has been displaced, has been put in the wrong place, and Toshav Hay means to put the hay back in its place within God's name. And the second idea is, after the hay has been returned to its place, you want to connect the hay to its source. What's the source of the hay? And the answer is, the second hay source is the Vav, and the first hay source is the Yud. And therefore, the first teshuvah would be putting the hay back, which would be Surmera. The second teshuvah would be connecting the hay to the Vav, which would be Asei Toiv. The third teshuvah would be the higher hay of Hashem's name, putting it back where it belongs. And the fourth teshuvah would be the connecting the hay to the Yud, which is the 4th madrega of teshuvah. In other words, these 3 teshuvahs, which are really 4, become, to use classic language, 2 levels in teshuvah tata and 2 levels in teshuvah elah. 2 levels of the lower teshuvah and 2 levels of the higher teshuvah. And just to say a very, very short thought, what's the difference between the lower teshuvah and the higher teshuvah? And of course, now we know the lower teshuvah has 2 levels and the higher teshuvah has 2 levels. The difference, in short, is the lower teshuvah means about sin. I did something wrong, I need to fix it. The higher teshuvah has nothing to do with sin, it has to do with distance. When one is far from Hashem, he has to return to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the first 2 teshuvahs, putting the hay back and connecting to the Vav, is correcting wrong. The second 2 teshuvahs means putting the higher hay back and connecting it to the Yud, is making something right, coming closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Alter Rebbe is going to ask and answer the question, why, if there are 4 teshuvahs, do they speak only of 3? And you'll see it momentarily. Line 297, let's talk about the 3 levels of teshuvah. We know there's only two types of Teshuvah. Like it says in the Zohar, and it's brought in Tanya Gersa Teshuvah Perek Dalet, Tanya Bechinas Teshuvah Tato, Teshuvah lower Teshuvah, and a higher Teshuvah. Ki Teshuvah is Tashuv Hey. The Zohar says that the word Teshuvah means to return the letter Hey, and since Hashem's name has two Heys, Yud K, Vav K, therefore there's two Teshuvahs. V'yesh Hey Tato and Hey Elah. Hashem's name has two Heys, and therefore Vein Beis Teshuvahs Hanal. The two concepts of Teshuvah are to put the lower Hey back where it belongs, and to put the higher Hey back where it belongs. So how do you have three? And I told you before, we're going to have four. The answer is the answer is found in Zayar. The Reishis Chachma quotes the Zayar, and the Alter Rebbe now quotes the Zayar as well. When the person does Teshuvah and returns the hay to its rightful place, that's one idea. The return of the hay to its rightful place is called Eitz Hadas. Malchus is Eitz Hadas. But then there's another idea. Ochid bi'ilona dechaya becomes attached to the tree of life, Eitz HaChayim. And Kabbalistically, that's the letter Vav. Kedein ikri bal Teshuvah. Someone is then not called one who has done Teshuvah, but one who is a master of Teshuvah. So you have two levels in each Teshuvah. Doing Teshuvah and Bal Teshuvah, mastering Teshuvah. Putting the hay back in its place would be Teshuvah. Connecting the hay to the Vav would make one into a Bal Teshuvah. The Knesset Yisroel Teshuvah, Knesset Yisroel Malchus is the idea of Teshuvah. Uv Hachi Ikri, she too is called Teshuvah. In other words, the feminine idea of Knesset Yisroel is also called Teshuvah. The Ihu and the masculine idea, when you link Knesset Yisroel to the masculine idea, to the Eir Ampen, to the Vav, Baal Teshuvah Ikri is called the Baal Teshuvah. The Kadmoi Omri Baal Teshuvah Mamish, and the ancient ones used to call him Baal Teshuvah Mamish, Valda, and on this second level, not undoing Teshuvah, which is putting the hay back in its place, but connecting the hay to the Vav, is what they say that I feel it's Tzadikim Gemurim Eini Mechelim Lamed B'Makan Shebal Teshuvah Eim Demat Kan L'Sheni. This is what the Zayar says, that a Baal Teshuvah is higher than a Tzaddik, not one who does Teshuvah, one who masters Teshuvah, which is the second level of connecting the hay to the Vav. Or Pirish b'Mikdash Melech Sham, it's explained in the commentaries on the Zayar. There, be'inyan kedein ikri bal Teshuvah. What does this mean? That one is not called one who has done Teshuvah, but a master of Teshuvah. Kivin shu achas bezeir is connected to the midas of Atzilos. Lechaknik bechinas Baal. He's called a husband because the midas of Atzilos are masculine, and a husband Hainu mashpia lebechinas heitato, one who gives to the lower hay. So Teshuvah by itself is feminine. Connecting the truth to the hay to the vav is masculine, because the relationship between the vav and the hay is masculine and feminine. The same is true, of course. Yud and K is also masculine and feminine. So the word Baal doesn't only mean a master; it means the husband of Teshuvah. This is the meaning of the Knesset Yisrael. She Malchus is Teshuvah. Malchus by itself is Teshuvah. Uf hachi ikri. That Malchus is also called Teshuvah. Come have Bina, like Bina is called Teshuvah, which is Hey Law, because Bina is the higher Hey, and V'Heitata, and Malchus is the lower Hey. And I'm going to pause here for a moment. In Kabbalah, in some Kabbalah Sfarim, Bina is called Teshuvah. In the Rishonim, actually, Bina is called Teshuvah. Malchus, the feminine, would be called Nukva. The Midas would be called Dechar, and Bina would be called Teshuvah. The reason Bina would be called Teshuvah is because Teshuvah is considered higher than Hishtalshelus, and Bina is higher than Hishtalshelus. But the Mikdash Melech says that Malchus can also be called Teshuvah, just like Bina could be called Teshuvah, because of the concept of the letter Hey. And then you have the concept of Baal Teshuvah. When one has done Teshuvah, which is the level of Malchus, and then he holds on to the tree of life, which is the masculine aspect, Baal Teshuvah is called the husband, the master of Teshuvah. And again, the Chiddush here is that usually Teshuvah is associated only with Bina. Here we say Teshuvah is associated with both Hays, and Baal Teshuvah is the husband of each of those Hays, the Vav in the case of Teshuvah Tata, and the Yud in the case of Teshuvah. It brings down into Malchus a higher light. Now, what did I just say? Simple. Teshuvah is sormera, going away from what's wrong. Baal Teshuvah means bringing something good into this entity of Teshuvah, into this corrected circumstance, which is a higher light, namely mitzvahs. When you do mitzvahs, you bring godliness to the person who's done Teshuvah. Teshuvah means I return to Hashem and have a unique relationship with Him, and He has a unique relationship with me. Baal Teshuvah means that this relationship is illuminated with godly light through mitzvahs. Line 308, how they move, and the implication is the lower Teshuvah. The lower Teshuvah itself has two levels, and they are Hatshuvah de Sormerav, Hatshuvah da Seitev, the Teshuvah of going away from evil, which is putting the hay back, and the Teshuvah of doing good, which is connecting it to the Vav. Shaydei Sormerav, staying away from evil, Gainim Shoshav Heitato Lagabe Vav, that the letter Hay should return to its place beneath the Vav. The Hainu Shaydei Yavenis, when one does Avedas, Gainim Esab Heitato Benega. The lower hay of Hashem gets caught up in Klipa, Commission is Bayel, Commission Kosov, as we saw earlier in this Maamar, that a sin sends Malchus away from its place. Oh no, my day Sormera, when a person stops doing Avedas, Nitkina Bechinazu, the hay is put back in its correct place. Line 312. But after a person stops sinning and the hay is put back into its appropriate place, Kadesh Yumshach Ba, to add to this lower hay, Hamshachas Teis V'Sein Me'edin Seiv Baruchu, to bring additional light from godliness into that hay mamash. The second Teshuvah, which is doing mitzvahs. Shaydei, that through this Mamshech Milmayla Lamati, bring down a godly light from above to the hay, which is the letter Vav, which is the second Teshuvah. V'alzem made Havav, the Shem Havai, which is representative of the letter Vav of Hashem's name, which is called Eitz Chai, as opposed to Eitz Atas. This is the husband of the Teshuvah. You corrected your ways, and now your husband gives you additional light. Because after one does Teshuvah, they join with their husband, with Baal, and this brings a connection between Sevav Klam and Amal Klam, which is Sarmerana Seitev. Line 315, and then you have a Teshuvah Gimel. What's the third Teshuvah? And we know that the third Teshuvah is associated with Mishkan Hasacha Yisroel and Teira, Zawi and Tashav Hayillah, returning the higher hay to its correct place. And I already told you earlier that the displacement of the lower hay means we do things that are wrong. We get involved in bad things, we have to correct them. The displacement of the higher hay, we didn't do anything wrong. We just stopped doing things that are right. We stopped connecting to Hashem. We stopped focusing and davening and learning. And when we renew our davening and learning, we renew that relationship, and this is the return of the higher hay. It's even higher than Sevav Klamen, because in some places in Kabbalah, Bina is not only higher than Ishtalshlos, it's even higher than Havaya, higher than Sevav Klamen, and also because it's Gal Satakul Bina. Okay, this is Kabbalah. If you're a Kabbalist, you know what I'm talking about. If you're not a Kabbalist, I can't explain it to you anyway. So, what do we have? A Maamar, which is going on for a long time, which speaks about three Teshuvahs. And here at the very end, he links it to the letters of Hashem's name. The first Teshuvah is the Hay, the second Teshuvah is the connection between the Hay and the Vav, the third Teshuvah is the first Hay. But there's only three Teshuvahs. Here the Rebbe wants to introduce us to a fourth. V'hine. Nei, the Mayari, we know from that is Yuchad Vav, is Teid and Mitzvahs. The union of the lower Hay and the Vav is Teid and Mitzvahs. Now remember, this is a bit tricky, because in our reading, the Hey is Sur Merah, and the Vav is Asei Tev, and Tev is even higher than that. So, based on our conversations in the previous weeks about Torah, maybe it could be resolved. But this is one of the many things we're just going to leave open-ended. Then there's two more levels, which is putting the second hay, the higher hay back where it belongs, and connecting it to the Yud. This is total sacrifice, which is associated with Torah. This is above mitzvahs and ordinary learning Torah. This is extraordinary learning Torah. Torah on a level of Mesiras Nefesh. And then the Alter Rebbe says, although it's explained here, that this Teshuvah of Mesiras Nefesh is identified through Torah. Because Torah comes from Chachma Bina. The source of Torah is Chachma, and it comes through Bina. And therefore, even though the third Teshuvah associated with Mesiras Nefesh, there's a level of learning Torah which parallels that. And then he says, "Ulefi ha'emes," to be sure, yes, but Teshuvah lo zu gam ken beis bechinas. Just like there's two Teshuvahs in the Hey, and the Hey's connection to the Vav. There's really also two Teshuvahs in the Hey, and the Hey's connection to the Yud. Shebet Teshuvah Tata. Just like in Teshuvah Tata, there's two Teshuvahs, and Teshuvah Elah, there's also two Teshuvahs. Hainu ha'alef, Tashav Hey Elah Gabi Yud. The first is that the Hey should go back to its place beneath the Yud, and Abeis Kishinik Bal Teshuvah, when the Yud masters that Hey and is mashpia to her. Or Pirish Mikdash Melech, which is Elah Abvenik Mashpia Lebechinas Sabina. The Mikdash Melech explains that just like the lower Hey has the two levels of Teshuvah and Bal Teshuvah, the higher Hey also has Teshuvah and Bal Teshuvah, which our Maamar did not discuss. This is actually explained in other places in Chassidus. Bepirish Teshuvah, Toshav Hey B'milu Yud. That when a person does Teshuvah, they're putting the Hey back in its correct place. But that Hey is spelled with a Yud as a Milui. As you know, the letter Hey can be spelled Hey Aleph, Hey Hey, and Hey Yud. Hey Yud would be the way it's spelled in Bina, which means to say that hidden behind the Hey is the Yud, which is Chachma. There's two levels of depth. The first level of depth would be the Hey itself. The second level of depth would be the Yud, which is hidden behind it. Beis Emkim V'chulu. Hainu Bina Liba B'chinas Pnimius Alev would be the lower level, and B'chinas Chachma, which is Amida B'Pnimius Alev, Itelumas Liba would be the higher Emek. Gam Yesh Leimer, also we can say about these two Teshuvahs something different. In addition to saying that the Hey would be Mesiras Nefesh, and the Yud, which is above it, would be somehow a connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Through Mesiras Nefesh, he says it as follows. Shebeis Eim Kemelu are two levels of Av. Hainu Bina, which is Av Rabba, and Chachmei Elah, which is Yirei Elah. The Hey itself would be Av Rabba, infinite love, and the Chach would be Yirei Elah. Now what do those things mean? To make a long story short, in general, when a person has an emotional relationship with somebody else, and in this case with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's a selfish relationship. Emotions begin with self. I love me, and therefore I love you. So one's love for a fellow is conditional to the love of self. So you only love somebody else to the degree that it serves you. What happens about a person who's so extraordinary that the greatest thing that can happen to you is to simply have a relationship with them? For example, Avraham Avinu had a servant whose name was Eliezer, who was a prince. He came from Damascus, from Damascus, and it says in Chazal that he was actually the son of Nimrod of all people. And he was a very powerful person, and he became Avraham Avinu's servant. Why? Because the greatest honor he could have would be to serve a man as great as Avraham Avinu. This is called altruistic love, where the love is not for what I'm getting, but for the sake of the relationship alone. In our connection to Hashem, Yiratata and Avasayla means emotional attachedness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which serve me, and Ava Rabba and Yirei Elah are emotional attachments to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which are serving the truth. The difference is Ava Rabba means I want the truth, and Yirei Elah means I have it. Ava Rabba means I have an urgency for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is infinite. Yirei Elah means I'm completely humbled as I stand in His presence. So Ava Rabba would be the Hey, would be the higher Teshuvah, and Yirei Elah would be the Yud or Baal Teshuvah. So, our Maamar spoke only about 3, and the Alter Rebbe whispers in your ear as you're about to leave, there's really 4. Our Maamar says, and if you look at this language, you have to assume that this is the Tzemach Tzedek's words, because the Alter Rebbe would not say about himself, Omar Khan. Only 3 levels of Teshuvah, though there are 4. Because although there is the higher Hey, and then there is the Baal Teshuvah, the Yud, which is connected to the Hey, which he explained in a variety of different ways, including Avarab and Yirei Elah, says the Rebbe, but to be sure, on these highest levels, the separations between the Yud and the Hey are not that significant. In fact, according to Kabbalah, the Yud and the Hey are never separated, which means in the context, Yirei Elah and Avarab are never separated. So although the Alter Rebbe knows, based on the Zayir and the Mikdash Melech, that there's 4 Teshuvahs and not 3 Teshuvahs, he sees the 3rd and the 4th as one and the same level. Al Kain, Heim Shnei, Madrega Achaz Beklal, Alter Rebbe sees them as one. V'hinei mavur lamayla, we explained earlier in the Maimed, that means last week. The Gimel Teshuvah elu, these 3 Teshuvahs, which we now know to be 4, on their Muslim, but Gimel is Bechen, are hinted in the 3 letters, 220 and 200, which is also the word Baruch, if you may recall. And the 4th level of Teshuvah, which is raising up all these 3 levels of Teshuvah into holiness. And one is for the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is represented by this word, Shareim is B'Chochmei Lo, which is an allusion to Chochmei Lo, which is called B'Chayr Eishes Agil. So the Rebbe gives a slightly different proposal. And perhaps he does speak about 4 Teshuvahs. Not like he said in the previous lines, that the 4th Teshuvah is one with the 3rd Teshuvah, but that the 4th Teshuvah is Baruch. The 1st Teshuvah is Elokeinu, the 2nd Teshuvah is Hashem Elokeinu, and the 3rd Teshuvah is Ata Hashem Elokeinu, and the 4th, which raises them all up, as we discussed last week, is Baruch. Ve'inyan beis b'chinas eilo l'mayla, and these 2 ideas above. Hainu ki toshav hei lo lagav yud Zalman mata l'mayla, ve'achach shenikra bal tshuva hainu shenimshach l'mayla mat b'chinas atak li'abo mi'abo le'ema. That's enough. Okay, so what did we do tonight? We finished the Maamar, which is a wonderful thing to do. The classes we gave in the previous weeks afforded us to delve into particular aspects of the Maamar, and what happened this week is we tied all of these different things together. We explained the Pasuk Mah Tovu, and we discussed the concept of 3 Teshuvahs, and the 4th Teshuvah, and the Mitzvah Hashem. Next week we're going to start another Maamar.